Rani from Peachtree Perinatal Wellness, welcome to the Trademark Radio studio.
Thank you so much for having me. Parenthood isn't always peachy. It's hard work.
You have your child and then the doctor's like, well, you can go home now.
It's not a Tamagotchi.
So society tells us that it is the best thing you're ever going to do in your life. It's so rewarding. The love you feel is like nothing else you've ever felt before. So what about the mum that doesn't feel that straight away?
Yeah.
Immediately they're like, what is wrong with me?
Yep.
Maternal suicide rates in that first 12 months after having a baby are still the key cause of indirect maternal death.
Trademark Radio, coming through on your wireless.
Welcome back.
I like rolling into a conversation with some weird topics or
Weird banter where no one's got any context to how we got here.
Yeah,
So let's just leave it like that.
Yeah, let's
anyone
do.
wondering, we're not going to spit on each other in here.
We're going to keep it very civilised and we're going to learn a lot of new stuff today.
It's not COVID safe. Yeah, but welcome back.
not.
Welcome back to Trademark Radio for another episode in 2021, and we're super privileged to have a very special guest in today.
Every week.
Our guest's name is Rani, but she's been called everything from, well, Ranatunga we just found out, which I believe is Sri Lankan, but she's also, once upon a time, was a bit of a motocross fiend, which I'll be keen to hear a little bit about. But and interestingly enough, she has a very nice tattoo on her wrist that says, she believed she could, so she did, which I believe now is more appropriate more than ever. So,
Absolutely.
Rani from Peachtree Perinatal Wellness, welcome to the Trademark Radio studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you here. We were late again. We've had 2 meetings, you and I. I've been late to both of them, and I like to be punctual, so I do apologise.
You keep saying this.
I do apologise.
Actions speak louder than
I know. Well, let's make up for it here with this great
Well, hang
chat,
on.
shall we?
It's worth saying we were late to the meeting before yours because we went to the wrong place.
Yeah, we went to the wrong place. That was me as well. So,
Okay, so
yeah,
it's
a triple
looking pretty
banger.
good.
It's a triple banger.
Hey, but we all make mistakes, right?
We do make
We
mistakes.
do.
Context, we were introduced by Ben Ashmole, who's been on this podcast.
He
Shout
was
out to
actually
Ben.
the one before us, I believe.
Yeah, well, Dan hasn't updated the website,
Oh.
actually. You've missed that. You haven't got Jimmy and Tam up there yet.
God,
But
you put me on the
sorry,
spot.
Sorry. Got you in trouble.
Have I fucked up? Should I leave?
There's been a mistake. But no, Ben was on the
Sorry,
podcast. He's a really great friend of ours, he and Laura, a little Aussie. So
Couldn't you just talk to those guys all day?
Oh, my goodness. So much stuff.
we got invited over for dinner there, what must have been about a month ago now. And
Ben cooked a lovely paella.
oh, it was delightful. Laura just yelled abuse from the other side of the living room at him the whole time, taking the mickey out of
She
him.
was juggling a baby, though.
Yeah, well, that's
Exactly.
right.
And interesting thing about it was we're like halfway through the evening. I was like, "Oh, where's your TV?" And they were like, "We don't have one." And
They
we-
have actually told us that.
yeah,
as
and they're
well.
like, "We don't own a TV." And I was like, "Fuck! I reckon there must only be like less than 1% of people in Australia that don't have a TV." I'm like, "That's incredible." I was like, "Why is that?" And they were explaining, well, we realised because obviously they've got their own business and they're super busy all the time, as everyone is. But they were saying they were coming home and they were just like veg out in front of the TV and they weren't connecting. So they're like, let's throw the television away so we have to communicate. And I was like, it's incredible.
That's self-awareness
Yeah.
right there, right?
Really cool.
So many people don't even notice that's what's happening.
Yeah, and they're like, we sit here, we either we'll either have like really long conversations or we'll sit here and read and then talk about the books that we're reading. Yeah, it was really cool. It was key takeaway from that dinner, apart from the delicious meal that Ben cooked.
Right.
And the red wine that was delightful
And
as
the
well.
sticky date pudding that Lily made.
That I couldn't eat. Thanks, Lily.
She made me
Gluten-free.
for Valentine's Day.
Hey, I'm gluten-free too.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to have any sticky date either, so lucky you weren't invited.
Am I the odd one out here?
Yeah, you're the
Must
weird
be.
one.
I'm the glutton.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I will just note one thing watching Ben's podcast with you guys. I did hear him mention that you guys are his favourite client. And I must admit, I took that a little offensively given the work he'd done with us last year.
Yeah, it's rude.
I think
isn't
he
it?
said that to everyone.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
That's his
Oh,
sales
okay.
pitch.
Bloody kiss ass.
Well, I won't feel so bad then.
Ben is definitely listening to this. But let's get a bit of background, Rani. You're from Peachtree.
From Peachtree.
What's Peachtree?
Okay, in a nutshell, Peachtree was founded about 10 years ago by two mums who themselves had significant perinatal mental health challenge, perinatal being pregnancy all the way through to postnatal. And they found that when having these conversations, either mums would kind of like start moving away because they're uncomfortable, or they would start talking about their own experiences because it felt safe to do that. So it was recognised that there needs to be a safe place for mums to come to talk about their challenges, emotional wellbeing challenges, we like to refer it to. Mental health tends to have that stigma. So that's what Peachtree started out as being, in community halls, in anywhere we could get space.
In Brisbane, it's
Brisbane-based charity.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of an important point.
Yep.
And then I came on board about a year later after I'd had my son and realised that there was just nothing out there for the support that I needed. It was either really extreme examples of what potentially could go wrong or really flippant, baby blues type examples. So I was like, there needs to be everyday support for just coming and having a chat about how this impacts us, because we're not comfortable to talk about it with just anybody. I mean, I had best friends at the time that kind of moved away because they just didn't get it. So it's really difficult when you're living, eating and breathing mental health challenge to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Particularly when it's related to a brand new baby.
Yeah. Well,
you're supposed to just know what to do, right? You're just supposed to just have it all together, and you're a mother and you're going to have it sorted.
Yeah,
but it's just not like that.
It's not at all. And the thing is,
but why do you reckon it's like that? Why do you think it's like that? Because the thing that I can't believe is that, like, you have your child and then the doctor's like, well, you can go home now. And they're like, everyone's like, righto. And you just pack her up.
It's not a Tamagotchi.
Yeah.
Correct, right?
But you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that's like, my wife and I are talking about having kids, and that really,
it's really daunting.
Because I'm like, I've got no idea what to do.
And this is the thing, is that no one does. So I don't know that when you're pregnant you can actually teach that stuff, because we call it the pregnancy bubble. It's a space when you're pregnant that it's never going to happen to you. So even for myself, as I mentioned, it's like I have a background in psychology. I worked with midwives and, in birth suites with mums and babes. That was my job. And, I totally had this down.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your experience.
Well, yeah, I feel like I didn't cover Peachtree very well.
No. Sorry.
Are we moving too fast?
I'm just so interested. Sorry.
Woo up there, big boy.
I better kind of finish the Peachtree. So basically we started out that way. 7 years volunteer-led. The unique thing about Peachtree, which we're extremely proud of, is that we're peer-led, which means that every person that works for Peachtree, certainly who does our service delivery, have their own lived experience of perinatal mental health challenge. So no one walks into Peachtree and talks to someone who has not been there themselves. And that is...
It's a key difference.
It's such a key difference. We're not clinical. We don't ever want to be clinical. What we provide is a safe space to then be able to talk about, well, we don't provide advice or opinions, but people can talk about, well, this is happening and we have resources we can share. So now we have Dad's resources we can share. And that's what we're about. So being 100% peer-led is huge for us. It's unique. We're probably the only organisation in Australia, I think, charity who provides that. And it's something, like I said, we're totally proud of.
That's really cool.
We wrote a program about 3 years ago, Viv and myself, who's our CEO. I'm operations manager, just so you know. And we got funding to deliver that program. It's a 6-week Sunshine Parenting program, we called it. But it's about all the stuff that we potentially don't know coming into parenthood that just helps that little bit of understanding. And a lot of mums just have those aha moments when they do that course, because you don't realise. You just don't. So we cover topics like relationships, bonding with babies, perinatal mental health, just in a very general sense.
Probably feeding.
Well, no, we don't.
Oh, really?
We talk about, things that can impact, which feeding is a massive one, and sleep, just quietly. But we don't delve into it in too much depth, because the goal is that we can then provide further information. This is an introduction to potential, symptoms, challenges. Relationship navigation is huge, not only with a partner, but also with family, with friends, work, all of those things, but just touched on. And then the goal is to perhaps follow that up with another program that delves into things a little more.
One thing I really like about that and you're talking so strongly about the peer-led approach and that you're not clinical, but what I'm getting is that it's a very empathetic type scenario where you're not there to solve the problems and it's just about the relatability piece, which for me is so exciting because in the mental health space and like what we're doing, very similar I suppose in that we're promoting a culture where people can just be there to support each other, and it's not, you don't need to have the solutions or solve the issues. And that piece there is probably the most important part, because then you can direct people wherever they need to go. But having that safe community is really important.
And often we do social inclusion. So obviously it's grown significantly. We got Department of Health funding over the last 3 years, the funding to deliver that program. We did an 18-month evaluation around the Sunshine Parenting Program, which showed significantly and clinically significant improvements for mums from before they started the 6-week program to after. Things like parenting confidence, depression and anxiety, quality of life with regard to their ability to function, which people don't realise can be massively impacted during that first 12 months of after having a baby. And people also don't realise maternal suicide rates in that first 12 months after having a baby are still the key cause of indirect maternal death in that 12 months. And that's a stat that people just don't, they just don't know that. And it could indirect because it could be a car accident, it could be an overdose, it could be anything. But oftentimes it's not recognised as being a perinatal mental health issue.
Yeah, wow. So obviously the conversation's come a very long way, and there's a few reasons why this conversation is really important to me, but I was just didn't really explain, but my mum's a midwife.
Yes.
She's worked night shifts her entire life.
Shout out to Loretta.
Single parent family. She's a lactation consultant as well.
Fantastic.
She works down in Sydney. I've heard the stories from just that side of things. I know like what the things that she's been through and birthing mothers have been through just on a surface level. But also from mum's own perspective, she went back to work like 2 weeks after having my middle brother because single parent family had to make ends meet. And in hindsight, obviously I wasn't born at the time, but like I look at that scenario and I think, holy shit, how the fuck did she do that?
No, absolutely.
And then I think about all the people who we come face to face with, meet every day. Every single person walking around the earth has a mother who gave birth to them, who went through a whole range of things, and there would have been nothing like Peachtree around a little while ago.
No.
And culture would have been a lot different around these subjects. So obviously
you
we've
see
seen
it generationally, right?
Yeah.
Our parents' generation so different. I think we're getting better at talking about mental health, but it's still got such a long way to go. Everything your mother experienced with regard to having to go back to work, the reality of life, like you just have to provide still, right? So whether it's the dad or the mum, we're so busy now. Often both parents are working, so take one income away from that situation. And
it's a
they've
recipe.
got a challenge,
yeah,
right?
it's a pretty.
And that's on top of everything else: feeding, sleeping,
Yeah.
all of the challenges.
Yeah, all the stress, and it's a snowball effect. And then I think coping mechanisms that so many mothers and parents in general must lean on, to just escape and just to get through.
And what society tells us parenthood looks like. So you look at Huggies commercials and, all of the lovely happy families.
They should be flinging dirty diapers around the place. Like,
catch this.
Yeah.
But the reality is that parenthood isn't always peachy. It's hard work. And for a lot of people that may have had previous mental health experience, my own situation where I hadn't had experience of mental health challenge, maybe a little bit of anxiety, here and there, but it often happens for the first time during pregnancy for both dads and mums, mainly mums, 1 in 5, but dads are 1 in 10. So,
Yeah.
So, and this is like you've got this. Sorry, I know you were about to jump, in, but then you've got births that are good, right? That you have a pretty smooth birth, not many sort of issues, complications, and you can still go through a range of things.
Yeah.
But then you've got really traumatic births. Where the PTSD that comes, just through the birthing process.
Huge. For mums and dads.
Yeah.
Because often through those traumatic births, dads are just pushed to the side. So, definitely for mums. I mean, I had a traumatic birth with my first son, and it absolutely significantly impacted my downhill slide from there, because you just don't expect things to happen that way. We're talking about, birth plans and do your antenatal, classes, but they don't talk about emotional well-being. Like, what happens when you start struggling? You feel alone. You feel isolated. Partners may not understand, themselves perhaps struggling.
Yeah.
It becomes this
massive... Do you feel that's part of the issue, that it's sort of having children and all that is sort of, it's not glorified, but it's sort of, it is such a positive thing, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's like, oh, it's so exciting and there's so much love and happiness, and, everyone's just so excited for the couple that's going through that.
Yeah.
That when the couple or one of the partners is like, actually, I'm really struggling and this is shit house. Yeah. What do I do? Because I can't go out and say it's bad because everyone thinks it's great. Yeah. Is that part of the... Well,
I can assure you, they talk about the Motherhood Glow. There was no glow happening for me when I was pregnant. Like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so society tells us that it is the best thing you're ever going to do in your life. It's so rewarding. The love you feel is like nothing else you've ever felt before. So what about the mum that has a traumatic experience, or maybe not even a traumatic experience, but doesn't feel that straight away?
Yeah.
Immediately they're like, what is wrong with me?
Yep.
And that's where we let our mums and partners down, is education around what does this actually look like.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you've got, you hear situations where, a mother will have morning sickness, an expecting mother will have a little bit of morning sickness, others have it all the way through, and it's just... to the point of
hospitalisation a lot of the time.
Horrific.
It's horrific.
And I would imagine when you go through, this is before you have the baby, before you go through any of that, that would just really sour the process, tarnish the experience of the whole thing, wouldn't it? Like,
it sets us up for failure. And you look at the terminology and the language used throughout pregnancy. I was a geriatric pregnancy because I was over 35.
Yeah.
Geriatric, right? It's not very positive.
Yeah. Is that the classification?
Yeah. Yes.
If you're over 35, they classify you as geriatric.
Lance has been on me about it because she's 30.
Well, get in before 35.
That's what I mean. She's like, quickly.
But
I don't want to be a geriatric. Fucking hell. That's insane.
There's just the language that's used medically, right? So we focus on medical side, but the medical language is often set up negatively. So failure to progress during pregnancy, failure to thrive for a baby who perhaps isn't feeding or eating well, which are very genuine issues, but failure to thrive. Failure is just constantly in your brain as a mother. So if you're not breastfeeding, failure to provide what you need to provide for your baby, just failure.
Yeah, you probably don't even realise that that's another like a key contributor to that, just the language placed around it.
Absolutely, huge.
And then you've got things like your obstetrician, are you having a home birth or you're in the hospital, like what are you doing?
Yeah, but I think even going back before that, like even like talking about my wife, she's like, every time I go see the doctor, they're like, when are you having kids? Yeah. You're getting older now. You better hurry up. So it's like this sort of pressure that like being placed on her, and then it's like coming back on me. She's like, we've got to hurry up and have kids. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm ready right now. Like my 9 to 5 is like pretty chock-a-block.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We like going for a beer after work.
And I like going for a couple of pints and some hot wings.
Don't even start this conversation.
but that's like sort of what we're going through in our marriage. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like, well, why is that? Why are we getting? It's not pressure, but you sort of, I suppose it is in a way, like feeling pressure that we got to, if we're going to do it, we better hurry up and do it because it's not as...
Absolutely. And then when you're trying to conceive, this is another massive area that people just don't understand. People might say, when you're having kids, you might have been trying for 2 years, but it's not something you hang out for everybody else to look at.
Yeah.
So for me, we tried for 12 months before we had our first babe. And I had people around me, left, right and centre, falling pregnant, which I had to be happy for them because they're friends and family. But inside, I am breaking.
Yeah.
Every month, you're like, oh, my God.
We had Jimmy and Tam. Jimmy and Tam were on the block last year, and they were wearing our stuff, but they did a podcast with
You would have seen the podcast, but Dan hasn't uploaded it on the website, so you wouldn't have seen it.
Jimmy and Tam is up.
It's
but,
not at the top. I know it's
on YouTube.
I looked yesterday.
YouTube's
anyway,
on.
So we're actually talking on the website, right?
The website.
We'll check that out. But Tam had a traumatic birth.
Did she?
And they've got one beautiful daughter, Frankie.
Yeah.
For Jimmy, it was traumatic.
It's like a massive.
Being
Can
out
you
of
imagine
control.
standing back, right, and watching
Helpless.
the person that you love
Absolutely helpless.
go through this, particularly if they're wheeled off into an operating theatre for an emergency cesarean or something.
It's your whole world.
They're left standing there.
Yep.
Like,
But they
what do I do?
But they had that traumatic birth, and they've. I don't think they're going to have another child. You know, that's their choice because they're happy with what they've got, and they don't want to risk, that anything might happen to Tam. But they get the questions from people. Oh, when are you going to have another one?
Don't you want your pigeon pair?
Yeah. And it's like they're not going to go. They're not going to start being graphic and explaining exactly why we're not having another one. But maybe, people need to sort of back off a little bit on that.
And absolutely, because I remember at a party, just standing around, and my sister-in-law at the time was just announcing her pregnancy, and everyone then turns to me and it's like, well, when are you going to have kids? And by the end of the day, I ended up, my response started being, we've actually been trying for 12 months. And people would just go, oh.
Yeah.
Shit.
So that's fucking
Because
hell.
how else, it's hard.
Yeah. Mm.
But but maybe those honest answers like that are probably what people do need to hear. And as hard as it is as hard as it is for the individual going through it, putting people in an awkward spot like that with like, oh fuck, maybe I shouldn't have asked.
And it's such a natural question to
Yeah, it
ask.
is.
People just ask it.
Yeah.
And particularly after the birth of the first one, you're right. And then what I found was Dane and I, my husband, talked significantly about, do we go through this again? And, this is 2 years down the track because it was a no-go topic for quite a while. And it ended up being him saying, it's your choice because it was your traumatic experience. I mean, it was for him too, but in a different way. And because I said, I just don't know that I can do that again. I don't know that I can put a baby through that again. I don't know if I can put our marriage through that again. Like the guilt is huge, and that guilt is like an overarching theme.
So to just run us through, like obviously it took 12 months for you to fall pregnant. Then it was obviously a traumatic experience in itself.
Well,
as in, like you went through a process where it's like, I'm trying to fall pregnant, we're not falling pregnant,
and
the guilt and everything.
What's saying in my head, I'm failing at this.
Exactly. So that you sort of was set up from the get-go poorly, but then went through, your pregnancy and post-pregnancy where you're like, I'm in trouble and I need help. Like when was that? Was it just like a progression, or was it like a day? Was it an event? Like what? When were you like, I need help and I'm not in a good spot here?
It's a very significant event. So basically, antenatally, I kind of felt that I was struggling a little bit anxiety-wise. Like there was a lot of fear. I had morning sickness for 20 weeks, the first 20 weeks, so half my pregnancy with both babes, which is debilitating, trying to work at the same time, full-time, it's hard. And then, traumatic birth, not really understanding, I guess, the impact of that at the time, because you kind of, you compartmentalise. Getting babe home, he had quite a few challenges around allergies, which we realised as early as 3 months. By 7 months, realised he was anaphylactic to egg and dairy. So again, I had to give up breastfeeding, which was the only thing I felt like I was doing really well. And I had to go cold turkey because of his allergies.
Anaphylactic to breast milk?
Well, if I was eating dairy and egg, it was having an impact on him. And then I was so unwell at the time over this period, slowly declining, that my own weight had dropped to about 52 kilos. And that in itself wasn't healthy. So medical advice was, you're not healthy enough to give up egg and dairy to continue breastfeeding, which is fair. We now need to put him on a soy-based formula. So you're going to have to give up breastfeeding. And that devastated me. So that was a huge thing. But the decline happened very steadily up until about 8 months. He was 8 months old. And because of my psychology background and working with midwives, I had this checklist in my head of all the things, maternal mental health-wise, after you have a baby, that you have to display in order to have postnatal depression. So even my knowledge kind of in those irrational moments was not helping me, because I pinpointed you have to want to harm your baby to have postnatal depression. I didn't want to harm my baby. I ate, lived and breathed for him, but everything around me fell apart. So that experience in itself, so I hung on to that, which meant I didn't have postnatal depression, so I'm totally fine. Not. But what this catalyst was for my own realising, I think my husband realised, quite a few other people realised that perhaps this wasn't going so well. But again, the conversation, how do you have it? Babe, really think you're struggling right now. Do you want to deal with that wrath at the time when you're feeling attacked? Because that's how we feel. We were invited to go with our in-laws to Straddie for 10 days, right?
Top spot. Big fan.
Well, every Easter we go camping there, so yeah.
Not by it.
But we were invited to go over Christmas, and I said to my husband, like, I was wearing a mask, just constant. We call it the mask of parenthood. I could go out into society. I'd be the perfect mother, having coffee with my babe in the cafe, doing all the things. I would get home and fall apart. And this is what a lot of mums and dads do. They go to work until they fall apart.
Yep.
And the cracks get more and more as you go through your experience. So I couldn't go out and feel confident that those cracks wouldn't start to appear. So when we're offered 10 days, I said to my husband, I can't do 10 days. Like, I know I'm going to crack. So I'll give you 4. Like, that was the
compromise.
And this was a very blunt conversation. I can't do this for 10 days. And it wasn't about my in-laws. They're fantastic. They're supportive. It was about me and my own ability to keep my shit together, basically, for want of a better word. So we went to Straddie. The pressure it took on me to get through that 4 days. When we got home, as you do, going through all the awesome photos of us as a family on the beach and me holding my babe and first dip in the water and all this sort of stuff, there was one particular photo that I was uploading to Facebook in our perfect life that just undid me. It was a photo of me holding my son in the water on the beach. Still get emotional thinking about it. And I'm just like, I'm a total fraud. Like, what the hell am I doing? This is not me. This is not at all me. And I just fell apart, like literally had an emotional and physical breakdown on the floor. My husband looking at me going, what has just happened? And my GP at the time was awesome. Now, I do need to say that there are a lot of GPs that are not awesome or educated in how to deal with parents who are going through these challenges. Education is key. So my GP had acknowledged that perhaps I was struggling a little bit. And she said to me, she grabbed me by the hands and she said, if you keep feeling like this, because she knew I wasn't ready to deal with it, you need to come back and see me. So had she not said that, I don't know what I would have done. I honestly don't know that I would have been here today, to be honest. But on the floor, I just kept saying to Dane, I need to see Julie. I need to see Julie. I need to see Julie. Like, that's in my head. That was all I could do. So that's what I was telling you guys earlier. By the end of that conversation with my GP, it was like, here's some medication you can take to like get us back to some degree of normalcy. Wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, the whole box. Or, because I'm like, oh no, I don't need medication. So totally fine. Or this is, the pamphlet and information for the mother-baby psychiatric unit in stay at Belmont Hospital. I'll take the prescription for medication, thanks.
Wow. They were the 2 options you had.
Yeah. And in hindsight, I should have gone to Belmont. Like, knowing what I know now, I would have recovered a heck of a lot quicker. My family would have benefited more had I gone to Belmont and got intensive help. But I was still in that frame of mind.
Yeah.
So you're probably like, I've got 2 options. I've got antidepressants, medication, or nut house.
Yes,
like, basically,
exactly.
you're like, fuck, what's the lesser of 2 evils
Right.
here?
That is like
And not to, and I, so
it's
when
wild to think that was the 2 options. Because you've only just come to a realization you need help, and now they're like, well, the only help that we can give you is this. That would have been so confronting.
And also, just to preface, we don't call it a
The
nut
nut
house
house,
generally,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's
how
That's
in
what
your
was going
head.
through
Yes,
my head.
yes.
Thinking, yeah.
And it was literally, oh no,
Yeah.
I don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, in hindsight, knowing what I know now, definitely would have been the better option for me. As it was, worked through the whole process. And look, let's be honest, still working through the process. Medication is still a part of my life, and I don't shy away from that. I hate the fact that that's still part of my life, but it's still there. We don't talk about recovery. We talk about discovery, because we're a whole new person after this experience, and that's not going to change. Getting back to the person, you know how you get back to your weight, get back to this, get back to that. It doesn't happen when you've had these experiences.
And the other thing is probably that you don't just get to a point where you've got like your baby keeps growing like it's a human. It keeps
like
evolving.
One of those toys you used to put in the water and leave them for 48 hours. Remember, you come out and they're like 10 times the size. Holy shit!
So
it's not a goldfish. Like, it keeps evolving, and there's no stage that is ever the same as the last.
And you imagine a mum. I mean, my experience is slightly different because my focus was on him. But you imagine a mum who is struggling with bonding, struggling with that parent-infant attachment, and then the guilt that is associated with that, like, what have I done?
We were just talking about this yesterday with Gemma. About, it's like, imagine it, like, well, it obviously does happen.
With
you
money.
Yeah, with money, sorry. Yeah, G Money, shout out. Is that, Gemma's our community manager, but she was saying, like, imagine, like, if you didn't love your kid, like, you just didn't get on with your kid.
Carl Stefanovic talked about this.
Yeah.
I remember when he had his, I think it must have been the baby with his second wife.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he didn't bond with it straight away.
On a
And
podcast, something.
on
TV. I haven't heard this.
No, I haven't heard it either.
I don't believe he said it on TV. I read it. I remember reading it.
Right.
Specifically, and he talked about how he had.
Because that must obviously happen, and then that's
Yes.
like a huge guilt thing, being like, holy shit.
And this is the thing. It happens more than people even realise or more
course.
than people want to talk about,
Of course.
because society says as soon as you have that baby, oh
Boom.
my gosh, the love, the
And you-
joy.
But you hear about it all the time. It's like, even Chris D'Elia said it. Did you see? We watched that video I sent you. So Chris D'Elia is this comedian. He's was in some turmoil last year. We won't go into that, but he's had a child.
Yeah.
And he was saying on his podcast that a mate of his, like 10 years ago, had a child and was like, man, like I would like jump in front of a bus for my kid. Like, that's how much I
Yes.
love this kid.
Yeah.
Like, I will fucking die for this child. Like, that's
Absolutely.
how much I love it. And Chris, like, that's like a bit out there, you know? And then he's like, and I've had my kid, and he's like, I understand. I was like, I feel exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like, I'd take a bullet for this kid. You know what I mean? And to me, I'm like, holy shit, imagine there's some family, like some poor person out there. It's like, fuck, I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like I'm not that connected to this child. Like,
Yeah.
because it's sort of like I don't know. It's just like setting these expectations that that's how it's supposed to be.
And do you know what? Expectations is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because no matter which part of pregnancy, perinatal period you're talking about, it's our expectations or society's expectations of what it should look like. And when it doesn't look like that, which is more often than not,
Yeah.
we fail. And we feel guilty that we're failing. We feel guilty for not bonding. We feel guilty for not seeking help. We feel guilty for our marriages being, like their guilt.
You're trying to fix every single problem, and you're just like flailing in the ocean.
But
I always say this, you could be the strongest person in the world and you would break under that complexity of issues. There are absolutely families that go through this and they have such a fantastic experience, and that is awesome. I would wish that on everybody if I could, but 1 in 5.
Do you think that the we talk about the power of social media both positively and negatively in society, and I would think, like, I don't think I've ever seen like a negative post about some kid before, like some new mother. I don't think I've ever seen anything where it's like, actually, this is like really hard and fucking it's tough. I don't think I've ever seen that.
To the point, because you're just expected to.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I'm like, I know mothers, like I personally know mothers out there that are struggling. And like every post they put up is like,
This
wonderful,
is my perfect
yeah,
family.
you know?
Well,
And like everything, marketing is not portraying
No.
the correct image. Like, we're all sold into, and it's not just this topic; it's every topic.
Every topic.
Marketing, completely
Yeah.
throws people's expectations and perceptions of what anything should
It
be.
really
right?
does.
yeah, I suppose we're guilty of creating this thing sort of ourselves to a degree. Like it's human create, like we created it.
It's what sells.
I think it's also worth noting we haven't touched on that. Your husband is a builder.
Dean.
Dane.
Dano, shout out.
Dano, absolutely.
To put it in context for some of our audience, we've got builders that listen to this podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I bloody hope so.
You know.
If you are a builder listening to this podcast, please let us know that you listen.
Yeah. Tag, like, and subscribe. Fuck. But to be fair, like, it's what you're talking about such a severe personal experience, right? But the other side of it is you've got your husband who's a builder who's running a business.
Yep.
I'm thinking has got some
M2 Builders, give it a shout out.
M2 Builders.
M2 Builders.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we've seen M2. Yeah, they're on Instagram. Are they on Instagram? M2 Builders. I'm sure I've seen that logo.
Site fences.
Okay,
Yeah, site fences maybe.
I may actually have put him in it here. No, because there's two.
Oh,
He works for himself. He's a sole trader, much smaller scale than the
There's
other.
also there's also MP3.
MP3.
Is Patrick Hoskins.
MP3. Yeah,
But
shout out
yeah,
Patricia.
so to the point I was going to say is that you've also got, as you say, you're protective of your relationship. You're feeling the squeeze on that, but
Yep.
he's also trying to run a business, and he's
There's a lot of factors.
Well,
Lot.
the reality for us, and I can't speak to every, because it's so unique what everyone goes through, but the reality for us was that he was leaving me in the morning knowing I wasn't well. He would go to work and he would come home and I would literally hand our son over, go and have a shower where I would literally fall apart. And he would know this, but he couldn't do anything about it because if he tried to talk to me about it, that wasn't going to work either. So it was this constant thing. And for me, and this is really hard to talk about because it's such a big thing with perinatal mental health, it was rage. So I would find myself, postnatal rage is a massively real thing. And as a mother who experiences it, it's something you don't want to talk about because how can you say I rage? And it was something that
Fuck, I've seen my mother rage.
Shout out Loretta.
A good mother should know how to rage sometimes, guys.
Get back here, Daniel.
But yeah, different.
but over crazy things.
Yeah.
Who put the fork in the knife section of the drawer?
But you're on complete edge. Like you're on complete edge.
Constantly.
Yeah, and I can I'm trying to picture, how hard that must have been just for everything. You know what I mean?
Well, you imagine.
Oh, like your relationship and his relationship with your new son and everything. That would have just been. Well, how was he managing? How was he coping through all of this?
Well, that's the thing. He's very quiet. He isn't great at communicating his feelings.
Shout out all communicating men.
Exactly.
Yeah, anyone else have that problem? Dial in.
Exactly right. So he kind of internalized, I think, and it would get to the point where I'd sort of watch him managing me in that, trying to de-escalate things or
Problem
trying to
solving,
step in.
typical bloke thing.
Fix it. Let's fix it.
Yep.
Plus he's a tradie. He probably had the tools to literally fix it, right?
Totally
What do I
brought
need
out
to
a
do?
nail and a hammer and off we go.
Off we go.
So, and we were renovating all through this.
Oh my God.
So let's just add another layer to it, right?
Public disclosure statement. No living renovations. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
Stressful.
for the first, 12 months, I was sitting downstairs while we renovated upstairs, and it was quite a dark space because it's nowhere near as light and sunny as what upstairs is. I would sit on the couch by myself every day, having come from a corporate work environment to now this, sitting there with my new baby, who I loved like crazy.
Yeah.
I would take a bullet for him.
Yeah.
And all my kids. But sitting there bawling my eyes out, like, is this honestly what my life has gotten to? Is this honestly it now? And that's a massive thing for mums, particularly older mums that have had a career.
Absolutely.
So there's all this.
Well, your identity's just been ripped away and you've just been like, now that's you. So you better look after that kid because if you don't, it's not going to survive. So you better get over there.
24/7.
And
But
you never go back to normal either. Like you don't go back to how you were.
And that's the thing.
Normal.
Yeah, and that's the thing that scares me because I'm like, oh well, like business, anything else is like, oh well, that didn't work out. Start again. Whereas kids, it's just like, well, you got to keep going here. You know what I mean? Like that's the only thing. Like I think, well, there's probably other things in life, but I'm like, that's one of the things in life where it's like, well, there's no backing out. Like it's you're fully in.
And let's face it, you guys work with mental health,
Yeah,
right? You've both experienced some significant trauma around mental health, suicide, everything else. It is something that you only understand when you've lived through it, either very closely related or you've lived through it yourself. So people don't understand. If they've not lived and breathed it themselves, they do not understand, which is why Peachtree is so necessary. The two guys that we've recently brought on as our dad peer support workers, they have a lived experience. So one of them, Tony, talks a lot about the pressure to provide, because dads have the pressure to provide.
Absolutely.
Whereas, you know, other guys, and I think it was Phil's experience, our other peer support worker, whereby he felt completely helpless in a situation where he's watching his wife go through something and he's helpless to be able to do anything. And that significantly impacted on him. And, you know, he had anxiety beforehand, but it just escalates when these things impact. I'm not saying don't have kids. Please don't take that. Because your experience might be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, you know,
it's just a matter of knowing the possibilities out there and knowing that it isn't going to be, pardon the pun, peachy.
And it's so interesting in a time now where, you know, gender roles are being challenged more than ever. When it comes to starting a family and childbirth, like physiologically and like practically, those traditional gender roles are like that for a reason, right? Because the mother,
men always provided.
The men have to provide, get out and do the
and let's face
heavy
it,
lifting.
Physically, you guys can't have babies.
Exactly. So,
there's been some
you
marvelous
seriously
steps
get off
forward.
the hook, let me tell you.
Yeah, but I mean, even, you know, we spoke at a NAWIC event a couple of weeks ago for International Women's Day, National Association of Women in Construction, and some of the women there who are working in construction.
Was it Rachel?
So yeah, I actually spoke to my partner Lily before I went, because like, how am I going to get up?
Shout out Spaulding.
How am I going to get out in front of all these women as a bloke and say something positive that, you know, we can take away? Yeah. There was one woman there, Rachel Price, who I've been aware of, you know, for a little while through social media, but I remember when she got her carpentry ticket and she had a kid and she's walking around pushing a pram with the baby in it, putting fucking pamphlets in letterboxes for work. And I just thought, and she was there that day, and I made a point of just talking about her and how much she inspires me and all men, because that's fucking insane, isn't it? That an individual has the ability to be able to physiologically and emotionally go through what women go through on either side of childbirth, and then push a pram around while handing out flyers for a blue collar.
Well, it's like your
job.
mother going back to work 2 weeks after she had Nick.
Yeah.
Like, that's, you know, like, how could you? I couldn't even consider
the reality of where we currently live, and it's getting worse. I don't see it getting better. You know, people want now, so that means you need income. So everyone's working. Women are like in a position where they have to return to work.
And I suppose this is why. Yeah, I mean, again, Pete, you're from Peachtree. This is what we're here to talk about, and it's a not-for-profit and it's a free service, right, for anyone to access to be a part of. Because finances, when we talk about mental health, suicide is just the end part of it. We're trying to talk about all these other issues.
We're early
prevention. It's like step
right.
outside, shit day. Let's fix it up.
Yeah,
what can we do?
Absolutely.
You know?
Let's not let it escalate to this severe acute level.
And it's the whole, like, trying to let people know that this stuff is normal.
It is.
This is what normal is. This is what the Huggies TV commercials should look like. But then probably no one would buy nappies or have kids.
They better buy nappies. I don't want shit everywhere.
We always say, like, please don't think it's all skulls and crossbones, because it's not, honestly.
No.
But it's the education. It's potentially what might happen. And if it does, you know that there's help. You know the steps to take in order to get that help.
And that as much as anything, there is no right way for anything to go.
There's
There's not one single perfect roadmap.
There's not.
Doesn't exist.
It does not
Get
exist.
that out of your head.
And everyone's experience is 100% unique. Like, there is not one that is the same.
No. And I mean, I do want to touch on, you know, what blokes and the symptoms that they go through, you know, because obviously we'd love to get, you know, both sides. But is there something out there? Because, like, I've spoken on this podcast a lot. Like, when I got engaged, my in-laws were need to do pre-marriage counselling. And we're like, okay. We went and did it. It was like really good. And I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
So what are there out there for people that are like, okay, we're thinking about having a kid? Like, is that when they go and find someone and chat about it? Or is it we're trying to have kids and we're pregnant now we need to go? Like, what's the best steps for people to set themselves up to, it's not succeed, but get through it with the right, you know, support and be like, we're setting ourselves in the right degree, so if there is trouble, which there definitely will be, we know where to go and how to deal with it, rather than be like, let's just wing it and see.
Yeah, I think I talked before about the pregnancy bubble, right? So the conception side of it can either be super easy to astonishingly easy, or it can be incredibly difficult, IVF. Like you, again, lay on all those layers of complexity. It's ridiculous. So there's that. And then there's pregnancy and the challenges that go through that. What we're told is to go to antenatal classes. Like that's really what we're told to do. The reality is that antenatal classes tend to focus on the physical, the mum, the baby, physically what you're going to be going through. There's stuff touched on around emotional well-being and potential challenge, but we still find that it's really lacking. We've talked to hospitals about this, but their comeback is always, we can't be seen to supporting one organisation, so therefore we can't let you come in and do anything.
I'm sick of that narrative.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a thing. So
we're all about collaboration.
Aren't we trying to solve the same issue?
This is it. It can be.
It deflates me.
It's a product. It's a competitive market.
How when hospitals are worried about their image and who they're partnering with, how are they sending a good message to individuals struggling with stuff who are also worried about their image and what they're perceived.
Oh yeah, we actually have resources, but we're not going to go with those guys because we've already got this other thing. But whatever.
Yeah. And look, there are private antenatal classes, things like that. But again, you talked about the economic affordability. It's not always available to every. We're so diverse in our financial. What we have, that there's a whole population, to the majority, I would believe, that have no capacity to pay for these sorts of things. So what they are getting perhaps could be so much more included as far as education around perinatal mental health, but it's just not. When you're pregnant, you don't believe it's going to happen to you. So, not me. It's going to be totally
well,
fine.
that's.
Yeah, that's just a thing. So often it's difficult to provide the education during pregnancy for that reason. The third trimester is often where it's the most beneficial to try because it's when that fear starts kicking in and the reality of
it's getting real here.
Yeah, this is getting real. Like I'm on the path now to actually having a child. So there is a bit more leeway there, I think. We've recently been talking to postpartum doulas who focus on the mum. And again, this isn't something that's available for dads, but in that postnatal period to support them practically, emotionally, everything, because they understand the holistic nature of what this involves. And that's what often is misunderstood. So we say, go to your GP first and foremost, or to a trusted other. Sometimes people don't have a trusted other they can go to talk about it. You might have friends, but do you feel comfortable talking about this stuff with those friends? So,
and do you think they will be comfortable having that conversation?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we talk about having, it's kind of like this funny contract, parenting partner contract, where it's kind of this series of questions and it's like, so it gives a mum the opportunity to go to their husband and go, or their trusted other, go, okay, so potentially I could go through this, or this. This is how I feel about it. This is what I see my support could look like. Will you commit to being my parenting partner? And they then do the same thing. Okay, so when you're feeling like this is what I'm going to do and this is how we can manage it together. And often we talk about using a code word. No one wants to say, I'm struggling, I'm
pineapples.
guilty. I'm right.
Yeah.
People talk about pineapples.
Pineapples.
Is that yours?
Well, it's just one I've heard that a lot of people use.
Oh. Yeah, no, they do. Even one of our ladies at work is all about pineapples.
Yeah.
But it's true.
What?
So, but, one of our workers, it was the monkeys on the fridge, and her sister was the person. So if she rang up and heard her feeling, or sense that she wasn't quite right, she'd be like, is the monkey back on the fridge? And you can just say yes. And then all of a sudden there's this complete understanding of what's going on because you've got this contract. So mine was, do you need a walk on the beach? Because the beach is my safe place. And I could say, yeah, I absolutely need a walk on the beach today. And it just allowed the conversation to happen more naturally.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Because it's hard. It's hard to talk about even with people you trust.
Yeah. I have a question.
Is it about code words?
Something I've observed, and you tell me if this is right or wrong, but is there sort of a culture where kind of other mothers who have been through it before can make light of expecting mothers or new mothers' situations because they've been through it. They're like, you're just and telling people how to be a mother and what to expect. And no, that's just you're carrying on or whatever. Like back in our day, we did this and that. Like I've heard those conversations.
Yes, all the time.
I've heard them.
Also, as a mother who's a midwife, look, she's an expert in childbirth, right? But sometimes you can get information overload, you know what I mean? And you get information from all these angles and you're just completely fucking overwhelmed and you're like, well, who do I even listen to here? And who are you to tell me how I should be feeling or any of this stuff? So how do you, because you talk about your husband not knowing how to bring it up with what you were going through, how the hell do we walk this tightrope? Like how does anyone navigate this?
Education. So it is in teaching people how to navigate this. It's not a natural part of what we do as human beings. We don't preempt that parenthood is going to be this potentially terrible thing or something that we don't cope with because we've always believed that it's the best thing that will ever happen in your life. So those conversations with trusted others are really important before it all happens. Pre-marriage counselling, right? Before it actually happens. So that is so, so important. And emotional well-being, not just physical.
Setting yourself up.
Because that's pretty covered, right?
Yeah.
But the dads aren't covered in the physical stuff because it's about the mum and the baby. The mum often gets overlooked in postnatal care because it then becomes about the baby. So it is this constant struggle of who's being supported and how, whereas emotional well-being is about everybody. If you're not well, either parent or both, the trajectory for an infant is 50% more likely that they will experience their own mental health challenge if a parent goes untreated.
Okay. Yeah, wow.
Right? So for mums, the stat is 74% of mums don't seek help until their symptoms are severe to acute, which was my issue. So that's 26% of mums that have had babes that will look for help.
So that sort of that ties into my question, right? So
I didn't answer your question, I don't think.
No, you
about
did.
How to get support.
It's education and it's a case by case thing.
And it's having a voice. It's having a voice. So if you teaching people how to have a voice, because when you're that vulnerable, which you are in childbirth, terribly vulnerable, it's about knowing what you can say in support of yourself, because I knew it all. I had all the knowledge. I had all the things. In that moment, I was helpless to advocate for myself. And I'm an educated person around this topic, right? So how is a mum who has no, at all understanding around what this is about, how is she going to advocate for herself? She can't.
And this makes me think of because blokes don't know what to say.
No.
There needs to be a guidebook of for blokes expecting fathers, what should you say and what shouldn't you say? Because I remember when we went up to Camberwell a couple of years ago to do a talk out at Rockland Station. And the
it sounds like an interesting story.
Beauty.
And I can't remember her name, but it was the cook, the one who takes care of the place, the kitchen. What's the name of that, Rossi? Come on, you're from stations. Anyway,
the camp cook.
The camp.
I don't think she was the camp
manager.
Cook. I can't remember.
Anyway, she was heavily pregnant.
Right.
And I think we were, obviously pregnant, past the point where, you don't have to question, is that person pregnant or not? And, we were meeting and...
Because that's the thing too.
Yeah.
Just quietly.
I know. I'm not joking about that.
Dan learnt.
But we went in for a hug and I said, I don't know if I'll be able to get my arms around you. Like that. And the women who we were there with looked at me like the ones who we were travelling with.
Yeah.
My jaws nearly hit the ground. I was like, what? And then...
Just talking practically.
Yeah. We walked away and it was like, oh, you don't ever say that to a pregnant woman. I was like, I know that now.
Yeah.
But
it's a reality.
Because a pregnant woman is probably not feeling great about the ones who aren't glowing, aren't feeling great about the way they look and feel.
Yeah.
And you don't need to make that worse. But it's like fucking foot in mouth disease when it comes to...
We all have it.
Yeah.
We all have it.
We've all done that.
We've all done it. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's learning from it. You don't go to the next one, hey, I got looking big again.
What I'm doing is telling everyone, don't say that.
Absolutely. But you talked about information before. There is information out there, but you're right. It is overload. Dr. Google is a total thing.
Yeah.
I banned myself with my pregnancy with my daughter. I had a panic attack reading up on something on Dr. Google because I had all the symptoms and I was like, oh my God, this is going to happen to me. I literally had a panic attack at work. So from that point on, I'm like, no more Google, no more looking up information. I know what I know. I've had a child. We've been through a pretty tough experience. My medical management of where I've been is really good. I need to trust in the process, trust in what I know, take the information, but only that information that I need and feel will be beneficial, and just deal with that. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone. And other mothers love telling you about their negative experiences of childbirth and pregnancy and everything else. It's very rarely positive. Like, it's awful. So often it sets us up for a real struggle sometimes.
God.
Yeah, well, I suppose.
There needs to be a book. Sorry,
Yeah.
there needs to be a little book. I'm just talking from the bloke side of
Yeah,
things
right,
here.
totally.
There could be like a very simple, very blokey book of like do's and don'ts and
Yep.
kind of what to expect.
Do you know what? Happy to work with you guys on
Yeah,
this
that
book.
could be
we
something.
could collaborate.
Let's
Like,
do
I
it.
think it's
Let's
important.
do it, because if we could make it sort of funny, something that's digestible in a pub, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
totally.
Like that, because it's just that,
And I
blokes
guess-
only need little bits of information, right? It's like,
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
right, got
not
that.
not too much all at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what that parenting partner sort of deal was that we were talking about, because it can be, what isn't going to be helpful to me when I'm feeling like this, and them saying, or your husband saying, okay, well, what can I say when you're feeling like this? But talking about it before it even happens so that you're prepared.
Yeah. Well, preparation, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So the code word can happen. I really need a walk on the beach. And then the conversation can start. Hubby knows.
Do we need additional resources?
Let's not approach it in this particular way. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're nearly at our hour.
Oh, sorry.
No,
No, that's fine.
No,
but
I think we
just-
let this flow,
I
because
just-
this is fucking
This
great.
is so I before we came on air, how professional does that sound? We
Not
spoke
very
about-
coming
not
from
very-
you.
Yeah. The women. I didn't like how much you laughed at that, Rani.
I must admit, I
joking.
did look on your website when I saw, I thought it looked so professional. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this.
Yeah, we're very laid
It's
back.
all a facade.
We're very laid back. But you were saying 1 in 5 women struggle with
Postnatal depression and anxiety.
Yep, and 1 in 10 men.
Yes.
Right. So, I look at postnatal depression and I think, righto, I think I know some of the key warning signs that there would be for women that are struggling with postnatal depression. But I don't think I could put my finger on what men's postnatal depression would look like.
To be honest, it's probably not too dissimilar to women. It may be a lack of bonding with a baby. It might be anxiety. It might be depression. It might be anxiety around the necessity to provide or the feeling that you have to provide. It's rage. The escalation or first-time occurrences of domestic and family violence in the first 12 months after you have a baby is significant.
Yeah, right.
Right? And I'm not saying that's just on men. Like, I just admitted to having rage.
Oh, no.
Like,
But
not that, it
yeah.
wasn't physically impacting, but
Yeah.
emotionally and verbally impacting. Huge. So, I'm not sure the symptomology actually is too much different.
Okay.
I just feel like it comes out in different ways. And there's so much still that we don't know about, not sleeping, not eating properly, just general self-care things that... But then it's the borderline of, okay, we all have that at some point or another. It's not always mental health, or impacted mental health. But if you're feeling that way for periods of time, and they usually use about 2 weeks, if you're more often than not feeling that way in that 2-week period, it's about time to go and have a chat with someone.
okay.
And
That's
generally
a good rule to work by.
and generally that someone is a GP.
Yep.
If you get a great GP, the resources are there. You can be, come to Dad Brain at Peachtree and have a chat with other dads or
Can
what
people
have
do
you.
that remotely? Or is it only in person?
We're about to start some online groups for
Yeah,
dads.
cool.
Because geographically then
Yeah.
you're not restricted, and that's really important to us as well.
One thing I think is really important with TACs upstairs and our psychologists,
Fantastic.
we're really promoting, we can handle crisis stuff,
Yep.
but we're not positioning ourselves across support service. We're just here for anyone. anytime, whether you're struggling or whether it's for someone else that you're worried about that you don't know how to help. But really what we're trying to instill is a culture where people are just prepared to just pick up the phone and say, hey, just had a baby. I think I'm all right, but I just...
It's not as rosy as I thought, and I just might need a hand.
It's
here.
not as
Hang
rosy.
on, not roses, peaches.
Oh, peaches, not a peachy. Sorry.
It's not as peachy.
Gotta
as
stay
We're
on
not
brand.
dealing with the
Stay on
fucking
brand.
rose bush. But
It's
yeah,
a peach tree.
I suppose it's really important for mothers, fathers, and support networks of anyone going through this sort of stuff to just know where they can go to feel supported, to be able to pick up the phone and just have a yarn. And it doesn't matter. It's a new experience. You're not expected to know how the fuck any of it's going to work.
Totally.
So ask a question. Like
Yeah.
it's just ask a question anytime. You
And
know?
often it is those phone lines, I think, that help because, well, but then it's still stigma associated with that. Like, what if someone finds out that I've been talking on Lifeline or PANDA, which is the Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Association?
I've spoken to Lifeline. I've seen psychologists. I've been on mental health plans. You've been through it all.
Totally.
Everyone's been through it.
Yeah.
Panda.
But it's, so that's the Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Association.
Right.
Or-
Never heard of that.
Yeah. So, yeah, they are available. They have a telephone support service. They have a triage service. So they're there for general support,
Yeah.
but they're also there to be able to, connect you with where you need to be. And that's a national hotline. So that's really key. But Lifeline is still key. Acute mental health teams, and that number is key if you are in that crisis. TACS is absolutely where you want to be going. And that's what I feel like the beautiful collaboration here
Little
is.
synergy, yeah.
Yeah, because you guys are offering that immediate clinical support, which actually for dads or people that are concerned, it's actually so much more meaningful because it's built from a base of understanding and experience yourselves. So what we're providing is then the connected support of dads getting together, having a yarn over a barbecue on a Wednesday night at our Peachtree House at G-Bung on the back deck. And just, you can go
Chewing
on
the
to
fat. Yeah.
the Dad's Branch at Peachtree Facebook page and there's selfies. Like every week they take a selfie of the dads like just hanging out. And that's what it's about. But it's facilitated by two dads who have their own lived experience, who get it.
That's good. And what about the kind of the idea that, we've just rattled off a bunch of different support networks and things that are out there.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not. One isn't the right one. One's different. One's better. One's
Pizza shops.
not better.
Don't
but,
stop eating pizza.
Yeah. If you get a bad pizza, you don't stop eating pizza. You just go to a different
Go
pizza
to-
shop.
that- totally.
Yeah.
And
Shout
it's-
out Justin Gange.
That was
Congratulations on Holy Moly.
We haven't spoken about that.
I feel like you guys are like totally over this marketing thing.
Oh, no, we love it. It's so much fun.
Justin Gange was on our podcast. He works with Mates in Construction. He was on our podcast way back. But he gave us that analogy because he's been
it's
through
true,
his own
right?
stuff. But he was
About
also
psychologists.
just on the TV show Holy Moly as a
Yeah.
contestant.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Right, get
So
it
just
now.
give you the explainer.
My kids love Holy Moly.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's
quite like-
great.
But you're exactly right. We advocate for the fact that any of the mums, any of the dads that we talk to, if you're going to see a GP, if you're going to see a psychologist, and this is again about having your voice and knowing gut feel when it doesn't feel right. If you're not getting the validation, the reassurance and the support you need from these health professionals, find someone who does. And that's what it's about, finding that right fit, because we don't fit with everybody, and it's important to be able to do that because you need to trust them. But then what's exhausting is having to tell your story over and over and over again, and that's what stops people from seeking help.
Oh,
That's what we've been talking about a lot, and that's one of the things.
you are preaching.
Even with
To the converted.
100%.
Well,
We
yeah.
are all, that is our whole jam.
It's really
You've got to be able to
hard.
talk to the same person every time if they're the right one for you. But also, what about trusting your gut and like going with your gut feel? Because
that
like
intuition.
because like people's intuitions and their gut feel, like I believe it to be very accurate, very true.
Yeah.
I certainly believe that.
I
and
do too.
You get some advice or a recommendation or anyone from someone, and you just feel that maybe
quite
this
right.
isn't right. Go with it. Trust that. Seek a second opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that's a whole other podcast. But like the idea around, someone's like a doctor giving you advice on something and it doesn't feel right, well then that's okay because it's just one person's opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
And the thing is, though, that society has told us health professionals know best.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
if you go to a doctor, it's like having a baby. They know what they're doing, the health professionals. So how can I voice up and go, you know what? I'm actually not okay with this, I'm not comfortable with this. Same with the GP, same with the psychologist. You don't feel like you can question or in any way say,
But I think
actually, you're not really hearing me right now.
But I think that's the only, like the medical industry is like the only profession, right, where people are just like, they're all one in the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you go to one doctor, I expect the same as that other doctor.
Tradies,
Whereas
you get 3 quotes.
that's
right?
what I mean. There's not a single builder.
Don't trust them.
There's not. Yeah, don't trust them. And you get it.
I've got one as a husband. I totally get it.
You get it written down. No, but the thing, like, there's not a single other profession out there that is like that, where they just rock up to the first one, like, there's
totally
not
agree.
one.
Totally agree.
But, you know,
and
you
we
do-
appreciate it for Peachtree. That may not be the right fit for everybody, but let us help you find somewhere that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like this. I don't know where we're going for time.
Where-
This has been a fantastic
Has it?
podcast.
Okay.
You're amazing. You're
Yeah,
great.
it's awesome. Yeah.
And I feel like
I've educated myself today. I feel educated.
I agree, but I also think this is such a massive
It's
and
massive.
misunderstood topic that, you know, we could easily dive into this again and again.
And
you know
again.
what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because often I think it's maybe a platform like this that sometimes will spark questions from listeners and other guys or other mothers that they're like, oh
Absolutely.
shit, you hear something and you want to know more, but they still might not have the confidence to reach out. But
Well,
Well,
the other
yeah.
thing, just quickly to acknowledge, is that it doesn't always happen just like it may not happen with your first baby, your second baby, your third baby. We've had mums come that it's happened with the 4th baby. So you imagine
It'd
having
be even more crippling.
Right?
It'd be like, I've done this
Because-
3 times. Why now?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where that's what I mean about the complexities. It's not just a one-off, okay, your first baby, this is potentially what could happen. You're 50% more likely if you've had one experience to then have it again with the next. We've got mums that have never had it and then have it with, you know, and it's like, oh my God, what is happening?
Yeah.
And dads as well, because you imagine that having 3, you know, perfect, well, nothing's perfect, but 3 experiences, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God.
Armageddon.
can you imagine all this? And this is before you even got to start worrying about school fees.
Oh my God, don't even get me started on that.
No.
So you go through all of this just to get to a point where you can start funneling cash into their education.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dad's branch at Peachtree was literally born. It's something we wanted to do for so long. We just didn't have the funding. COVID allowed us to get that funding because we acknowledge that dads, as much as mums, the escalation of DV, the escalation of, you know, just families being pushed together in situations that fly in, fly out, potentially haven't been pushed into that situation for a really long time. It all just, and if your anxiety is out there anyway, and a lot of mums have medical anxiety, it's just like confounding. So, Dad's Branch was born out of that. So we got a small pocket of funding to do Dad's Branch. We employed our 2 guys, Phil and Tony, and it has been incredible. The uptake has been immediate. They have their own closed Facebook group where they offer each other support. A dad will, you know, go, oh, guys, don't know about you this week, but I am struggling. Who else is feeling it? And then there's all these replies from other dads going, yeah, totally with you. Like, it's been crap. And that's what it's about.
Apart from this podcast, how are those guys finding out about it?
Word of mouth.
Okay.
And we often, like, we have our Peachtree Perinatal main Facebook page, and that gets a lot of attention from other groups. So it's a constant, like, just pushing it out there.
It's interesting.
On social media.
I'm surprised.
And talking about it.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's something, you know, obviously you've probably already thought of all this sort of stuff, but like, you know, organisations like Baby Bunting or wherever people like new parents are going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like we're doing that with TX. So like the next thing is like all the people that are coming on board with us, we're just like, if you're a business and you invoice someone or you do something, just give them a TX card.
Yeah.
Just give them that because that's all you need to do. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing. Like people with Baby Bunting, it's like, oh yeah, going through this is awesome, but hey, if it doesn't turn out as rosy as you think it will, you know, here's
some
Peachtree. You know what I mean?
roaches.
Like go here.
Yeah.
I think that's where it needs to be.
Seed would be a good place to put that information. You know, where young mothers are going to buy the expensive baby clothes.
And mother clothes.
Yeah, geez, that's a lucrative industry, isn't it?
I've just from what I've heard
for
from
me,
my own
it's-
brother.
See, for me, it's Kmart.
Yeah, bloody oath.
I reckon you
yeah.
could walk around Kmart and just hand out brochures.
too much.
I mean, but they bloody got it all, don't they? Where else do you need to shop?
That's right.
Kmart, one-stop shop. So, Rani, thanks so much for your time. We really
No
appreciate it. I've learned a shitload. I'm sure Dan has as well. I know he has. Where can people get onto you and Peachtree, where do they go?
Okay, so we've got a website, which is probably the best one-stop shop for all our information. So that's just peachtree.org.au. Facebook page, the main page, Peachtree Perinatal Wellness. Again, pretty great overview. You know, we'll post this podcast up. It's how we get our word out there as to what we're doing, how it's going. And then we have, for anyone that attends groups, and that would be online or location-based, we have closed peer support groups where parents can support each other.
Awesome.
Power to you, and I've got to say congratulations because, you know, I know how much it takes to share a story like this, and for you to be able to talk about the stuff that you've been through and use it to not only empower yourself but others out there. You are making a difference, and that is how we'll change culture around these sorts of topics. So congratulations.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome to have you in.
Peachtree as an organisation is filled with women and dads doing exactly the same thing as me. So that's where the power comes from.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to chat to someone directly, Dan, TAX, they can go to...
Oh, come on, this is your go. Oh,
Okay, you can go to tax.org or give them a text or a call, Monday 9 to 5, 0488 469 88. Much love and admiration.
I'm so proud of you.
Love you all.
So
Thanks
proud
for
of you.
listening. And see you again next week.
Oh, like,
Thanks,
subscribe.
guys.
You know.
Like, subscribe, and please tell people that this is a good podcast. Arigato.
If I stop, I'll die.